Loon Press. Fiction. The Birds Who Row by Lee Sheridan. Some definitions of the word row. 1. Row. Propel a boat with oars. 2. Row. A noisy, acrimonious quarrel. Bushy Park is a large suburban park in Terenure, South Dublin. It is home to Vassal, a blue tit, who is using his sharp beak to apply the finishing touches, to weave together all the moss, twigs, fibres and feathers that form his nest. He steps out of the cavity for a moment to admire his day's work, to breathe in the scented air, and from where he is perched on the alder tree branch, he takes in the great sight of the duck pond below. And then, out of the corner of his eye, he spies a female flash of blue and yellow, moving at magnificent speed, that loops up and around before landing carefully by his side, a wriggling worm held securely in her beak. "Do you know what, Mila?" he says. "I might just keep you after all." She spits out the worm. "How I put up with you, I don't know." "You put up with me because I'm the one putting a nest beneath your feet." "I know you are, and you're very good." "Go on so, give us an old peck." "You can peck off," she says. "I'm starved. Here, take half of this before I eat the whole thing." The distressed worm, who is in the process of wriggling away, is quickly snatched, split, and savoured between the two hungry birds. "That'll put feathers on your breast," he says, sinking slowly into the warm comfort of their new nest. "Would you like to join me?" "Is it finished?" she asks. "'Tis indeed, love," he says. "I even threw in an extra layer of feathers for you." "My God," she says. "You'd swear you're thinking of starting a family or something." "Would that be so bad?" "You need to impress me with a dance first." "Are you not impressed by my amazing DIY skills?" She looks doubtfully at the crude pile of twigs and moss and feathers that are moving mildly in the evening breeze. You're lucky I've a soft spot in my heart for chancers." He seductively spans one of his wings, making room for her. "Enough of your tweeting. Get in here." She playfully rolls her eyes before flying into the cavity and nestling into his side. He then wraps his wing around her, and together, as the sun slowly disappears behind the tree line, they fall asleep. Night falls, shrouding Bushy Park in its tranquil embrace. Hardly a sound can be heard as its fauna descend into slumber. In the duck pond, the mute swan patrols the quiet waters, his head bent low, scanning the banks of the island, which is, at several points, occupied by small badlings of mallards, plumps of moorhens, the odd tufted duck and little grebe, and one or two coots. The low lapping of the river Dodder can be heard nearby. To the mute swan, its sounds are amplified against the silence of the night. His thoughts extend out to it, and he imagines what is going on further upstream. Up towards Orwell Road, close to the Russian embassy, are the parks of Orwell and Dartry. Near the latter, along the quiet banks, is the grey heron, Herod. He stands, sad and long-legged, with his tubular neck curved in a sort of S shape. He watches the gentle movements of the stream, the surface of which shimmers in the moonlight. His eyes are vacant, though his body is poised and ready. Amongst the shimmers, he catches a glint of silver. It travels speedily, the water surface raising fluidly along with its movements. As it approaches, Herod takes a small step closer, his head bowed. He arches back to gain impetus before striking, his long beak spearing the sea trout in its tracks. He reefs it out of the water, tossing it on the bank before devouring it. He picks it to shreds, pulling at its scaly flesh and swallowing it down his long grey gullet. A twig snaps. He stops. He scans the nearby foliage, his mighty wings steadily stretching as far as they will go. "I know you're there, Zoran. Show yourself at once." Zoran, a cormorant, nervously emerges from the shrubbery. He is a sizable bird, intimidating to most, but is only half the size of Herod, if even. "Why, hello, sir. Fancy seeing you here." "A real bird, Zoran, will make an effort to hunt for his own food. He will not feast on the scraps left behind by another. Surely you have more respect for yourself than that." "Of course, sir. I just happened to be passing is all." Don't lie to me, Zoran. I wasn't born yesterday. Forgive me, sir. It's just that a decent meal is hard to come by these days. Herod can feel the cormorant shrink away at his glare. He softens. I understand. It is not easy, my dear friend. There is a lot of competition in this area. Only the fittest can survive. It is very hard, sir. A lot harder than our folks had it. Them birds down in Bushy Park have it pretty good, what with all the food left thrown about after the village market on a Saturday. We get nothing like that here up in Dartry, do we, sir? No, we don't. Hard to move on when you've a family, sir. Would be nice. My parents were born in Bushy Park, so they were. Used to be more of a connection between the Bushies, the Orwellians, and us Dartrys. That's all history now, though, isn't it, sir? Herod doesn't answer. His gaze is fixed on the furthest point of the Dodder, to where it bends and disappears from sight. In his mind is the image of a map. As clear as the day, it was half-heartedly flung into a bin by a sallow-skinned visitor of the park. He remembers the layout, the neatly structured greens and greys and blues, arrangements and shapes that corresponded with what he was already familiar with from the air. The plan is forming in his mind, but he cannot do it alone. The birds of this park tremble when they see him. If they could help it, they would hide when they saw him. They reek of fear. It is almost unpleasant to see them in such a state, but he knows their loyalty is absolute. He knows they would do whatever he asks of them. Zoran, he says, his gaze unbroken, we are going to reclaim what is rightfully ours. At dawn, call upon any male bird who is able to fly. What is this, sir? He asks. It is a uniquely organised procedure. It is nothing more than that. Nothing more. Nothing more but the blue-black night that melts away into morning, soft and orange from the rising sun. Trees sough, leaves sway, and life stirs all around. Is it raining? Asks Mila as she wakes up from her sleep. No, says Vasil, awake with a start. No, it's not. The resonant clack of rocks against the tarmac below, the splash and kerplunk of stones as they descend into the pond. Quacks, squawks, chirps and twitters from above, the morning sky filled with wave after wave of flying V's, so many it looks as though they will never stop coming. Look out! Yells Vasil, a stray stone striking the branch they are perched on. What's going on? Asks Mila, spreading her wings to keep balance. I don't know, love, he says, watching in horror as the rocks come storming down, smashing mallards and coots and grebes. One strikes the mute swan, who flaps his wings and hisses violently at the sky. Some of the stones even hit the few humans that are jogging about. They look up at the sky, panicked and confused, before running for cover under nearby trees. In the distance, a shrill whistling can be heard over the clamour of the stones. Vasil! Vasil! I'm coming over. Who's that? Asks Mila. It's Dennis, he says. Look, there he is. Dennis, a kingfisher, zooms over. He lands between Vasil and Mila, wide-eyed and panting. Have you any notion what's going on here? Asks Vasil. The Orwellians and the Dartrys. They've mobilised. Mobilised? Why? They want Bushy Park. I can only guess why. I heard a few tweets recently. There's food shortages upstream. There's also Herod. Herod? Asks Mila. Who's Herod? I've heard of him, says Vasil. He runs the show over in Orwell and Dartry. He's an owl fella. Seen a lot of action over the years, I'd say. Aye, I'd say he has. He's been around longer than what's normal for a bird of his type. He's powerful, though. I saw him leading the first wave, dropping the first rock. A big one at that. Landed right on two of Justinia's little ducklings, God love her. We have to do something, says Vasil. We can't just let them drive us out of the park like this. Do something, blurts Mila. What can we do? There's too many of them. We should leave. We can make a new nest somewhere else. Oh yeah? Says Vasil. And give up our home that easily? What if they invade another park and drive out the birds there too? The barrage has stopped, observes Dennis, peering out from under the tree line. Many have taken cover on the island. No doubt the council will be meeting there to discuss what should be done in response to this attack. We should go, says Vasil. We shouldn't get involved, says Mila. It's not worth it. Dennis looks at Vasil. Are you coming or not? Worry has corrupted Mila's little face. He thinks about staying with her, about leaving with her, flying away to a new park. He looks down at the pond, at the various ripples that are still moving out from where the rock struck, ripple after ripple, a series of expanding circles, meeting and fusing at different points, until disappearing entirely. He sees the dead ducks and the crushed coots, the mutilated moorhens, and the change that has come over Bushy Park. In this day and age, says Vasil, it is mad that something like this has happened. After all we know from those that have come before us, after all we have seen from the past, and how we know that such things never ever work, and only result in pain for everyone. You'd think they'd have a bit more cop on, wouldn't you? They've put themselves on the wrong side of history, says Dennis. There is no doubt about that. With tears in her eyes, Mila purses her beak. Please don't go, Vasil. Stay with me. We can build a new nest together. My nest belongs here, he says, flying after Dennis. He feels bad about leaving her, but he will return, and she will be the better for his decision, however cold it might seem now. They fly to the island, where the council's meeting is about to begin. Order, order, shouts the tufted duck, Leonid. He flaps his wings widely until the assembly settles. Our community has been shaken by a declaration of war. The birds of Orwell and Dartry, led by the oppressor Herod, have initiated a conflict that they must not win. Yes, we have been caught off guard. Many good birds and creatures of the pond have died. But their deaths, I can assure you, will not be in vain. We must respond. What can we do? Kill them. Drop rocks on their nests. Smash the eggs of their young. Gut Herod. Gut him, I say. Order, order, yells Leonid. One at a time. Vasil raises his wing. Vasil, go on. We could impose sanctions. How could we do that? Snaps Vitold, an irate old duck. We could send messengers up to Herbert Park, get them to create a dam that will prevent any fish from swimming down the Liffey. We could also make our own dam and prevent any fish from swimming back upstream. Not all the birds are reliant on fish, says Vitold. It's a waste of time. We must respond with force, not dietary restrictions. It's an idea, says Leonid. Anything that will hamper their efforts is worth trying. Yes, Vasil. You and one other bird will go to Herbert Park and notify them of the invasion. We will work on building a dam here. If they are willing to build one at Herbert Park, great. It's too dangerous, says Vitold. In order to get to Herbert Park, you need to get through Orwell and Dartry. You'll be caught, tortured and killed. Vitold, if something is not done, we will all be caught, tortured and killed. This is competition. It's not competition. Herod wants Bushy Park. He wants to restore the union that existed between the three parks. He wants things to be just as they were in his youth, and he will achieve it. He has the means. Dennis points his wing at him. Vitold, if you've nothing good to say, then button your beak. I will accompany Vasil to Herbert Park. We will cut off the enemy supply of fish from the River Liffey, and we will return in one piece, so help us God. Good, says Leonid. You are brave birds, and I have great faith in your mission. You will leave this afternoon. There is no time to waste. Godspeed, my dear friends, and good luck. Things are set in motion. All mothers and chicks and older birds were escorted to Dodder Riverbank Park. The journey was long and arduous, but at least they are out of harm's way. For the birds who remained, their jobs were divided accordingly. Some went to work on building the dam. Others began making reinforced nests made from stones, wattle and daub. It was difficult, but they managed to construct covers for their nests by overlapping layers of relatively small flat rocks until the roof could be sealed with a capstone. Some of the nests, like Vasil and Mila's, were already protected on account of being inside a tree cavity. Vasil and Dennis, they spent the afternoon with their families, filling their bellies with food and saying goodbye. You better come home, says Mila, crying. I will, I promise. Don't worry, says Dennis. I'll get him home to you. She smiles, though her eyes remain sad. Good. Hurry, won't you? We'll be as fast as we can. And you be careful too. We don't know when they'll strike again. He pecks her farewell, and with that the pair set off, flying flecks of blue and yellow, blue and orange. They gain altitude and follow the Dodder for 3 kilometres until they are over Dartry. We're in dangerous airspace here, Vasil. Keep vigilant. Below, he can see the great green masses that are Dartry and Orwell. From here, they look so peaceful, he thinks, angling himself to glide northeasterly. They are at peace, though, he eventually supposes. They might be at war, but there is no disruption in their land as of yet. Would he be happy to strike their land, kill their innocents? Or would it be enough to just see them call a truce and keep to themselves? The latter, he thinks, is all I want. It's not too late for it either. "Look out!" says Dennis. 2 red kites swoop down on them, talons at the ready. Vasyl manoeuvres in time to dodge them, as does Dennis. The kites, annoyed at their foiled attack, let out a shrill mew before swooping up and circling around. "They're coming in for another strafe," says Vasyl. "Head for the tree line. It's our best chance to hide from them." They descend rapidly towards the trees, the shrill kites wailing above them. "Vasyl!" He ducks in time just as one of the predators come in to slash him. Dennis's wing, however, is severed by the other's talons. He lets out a cry as he spirals out of control, soaring through the tree line and disappearing from sight. "Dennis!" he yells. "Dennis, hold on! I'm coming down!" He flies through the tree line and perches himself on a shaded branch. Breathless, he scans around for his friend, careful not to let out a call just in case the predators hear him. He spots Dennis after a moment. He is lying on the ground, his wing twitching. He goes to fly down, but sees the shadows of the red kite circling overhead. Vasyl stares at him earnestly, and his friend can only wave his good wing at him, ushering him away. He hesitates a moment, but the cries of the red kites are growing louder. He leaves, just as they land beside Dennis. Their sharp beaks parted, their hungry eyes widened, ripped, shredded, picked and pulled at. Vasyl imagines the scene as he flies away, too choked with horror to cry. His body moves while his soul remains paralysed, fixed on the place where his friend is being devoured. "I promise you, your death will not be in vain," he thinks as he approaches Herbert Park. He flies low and with caution as he zooms over the fence towards the pond. It is not unlike Bushy Park, a generally flatter plain, and a bit smaller, perhaps. In the pond there are familiar creatures, mainly mallards. He approaches one and demands to be taken to their leader. "Who's asking?" spits the duck. "Leonid of Bushy Park," says Vasyl, perched upon a seat facing the pond. "What a load of quack," he says. "I mean it. The parks of Orwell and Dartry, led by Herod, have begun an invasion of us." A series of low quacks are exchanged between the ducks. They eventually motion for him to follow them, and he does so, to the far side of the pond that is more shaded by trees. Their leader, another tufted duck by the name of Bertrand, is resting there. "You better have a good reason for disturbing me at this hour," he says, his eyes still closed. The situation is promptly explained to him, and his eyes snap open. "Well, faith," he declares solemnly, "I hadn't a notion. And what did you say your plan was? Implement sanctions in the form of dams that will prevent any fish from passing through the parks of Orwell and Dartry?" "This is exactly my proposal, sir. The inhabitants of Bushy Park have already begun working on their own dam. It would be great to show solidarity between our parks, a non-violent approach. By inflicting some degree of hardship on his people, Herod might be deterred." Bertrand looks to be considering the proposal, though one of his advisors is quacking something into his ear. Vasyl is far from fluent in Duckish, but he knows by the duck's manner that he is attempting to dissuade his leader from getting involved. "Many have died already," says Vasyl. "Chicks, mothers, fathers. Even my good friend Dennis was killed on the way here. Families, too, have been separated. We need your help. I know you're not the ones being invaded, but if Herod gets away with this, then who's to say he won't do it again? To another park?" The ducks look doubtfully at each other, all except Bertrand, who seems to have made his decision. Within the next hour, plans for the dam are being made, and Vasyl is offered food before his journey home. "You are a brave bird," says Bertrand. "I wish you luck and want you to know that you are not alone in this." "Ta," says Vasyl, bowing slightly. "You're not a bad bunch, you Herbertians." "No, we're not. The crows are a bit of a nuisance, though, but look, it takes all sorts." "Very true. I best be off then," says Vasyl. "Yes, you best be off then. Godspeed." As he carefully flies along the periphery of Orwell Park, he hears tweets and chirps from the locals about how Leonid is an oppressor, about how Bushy Park is a place that Herod is trying to save and restore to its former glory, a uniquely organised procedure. He makes it sound all so formal, so justified, as though he is some sort of saviour. He blinks and is suddenly on the ground, his small frame clasped under a dark webbed foot. He flutters his wings, but the foot holds him firm. It is useless, completely useless. Towering over him is a beady-eyed cormorant. "What have we here, then?" asks the bird. "Looks like a messenger," says a nearby raven. "Herod will have himself a field day when he hears about this, so he will." Fasil says nothing. He tries to appear brave, but his little body is shaking. He is thinking about Mila. He is imagining them in their nest together, with his wing around her. He wishes he had stayed with her, only for a moment, before telling himself that he has done the right thing, that he would not have been able to go on living without at least trying to be of some service to his park and his fellow birds. By now, the cormorant's beak is only a few inches away. He is moving slowly, teasing him. He can imagine the darting motion, the sudden snapping of his neck, the swift death that he would likely not even feel, all before being engulfed by an eternal, unfeeling blackness. "What you will do quickly," says Fasil. "I intend to," whispers the cormorant's deathly voice, now not even an inch away from his tremoring face. Suddenly, there are the sounds of running, the rustling of leaves, a growl and a cry, and before Vasil can open his eyes, the weight is lifted from him. He catches sight of the cormorant being ravaged by a collared dog, and as much as he'd like to, he does not wait around to watch its end. He flies fast, zooming up and over trees, around trunks and fences and gates, until he's finally back where he belongs in Bushy Park. Mila, he thinks. I must see Mila. He sees that the dam is nearly done, and the majority of the nests, most of which are now located on the island, are reinforced with stone. All around him are little scenes of survival, creatures of the park looking out for each other. Some are wounded, some are crying, some are hugging, and some are helping. He flies up to his cavity. He looks for Mila, but she is not there. He sees their nest, and in it a little egg. He wells up when he sees it. Panicked, he flies down to the island. He calls out for Mila, hopping from branch to branch, all the while expecting to catch sight of her. Perhaps she was moved to a safer location. "Mila," he tweets. "Mila, Mila, I'm here. I'm back." Leonid hears him from the bank. He paddles over. "She's gone, Vasil." "Gone? Gone where? Another park?" "She's gone. She was killed during an air raid this afternoon. I'm sorry." Vasil shakes his head. No, you're wrong. She is still here. I just can't see her. She is gone, Vasil. I'm sorry to say." He says. He falls silent. All the noise fades out. All the scenes continue to play around him. Everything has only begun, and all is ended for him at once. An implosion of the soul, an egg left in his nest. How can he go about this alone? God above, give me strength, he thinks. For strength is what I will surely need.